Welcome to the March to a Million podcast with Greg DuPont, founder of the Wealth Solutions Network. In this podcast, Greg shares his journey to positively impact 1 million lives by creating an army of financially minded attorneys who embrace an expanded role in their clients' lives. Greg and his guests challenge the status quo in the legal profession and the financial services industry, and show attorneys how they can improve their lives, provide greater value to their clients, and experience greater professional satisfaction. Join us in this movement and strengthen your business by learning how to solve your clients' most pressing financial problems.
Hello and welcome to another March to a Million podcast with your host, Greg DuPont. Today, we're going to talk about 3 things that you might think are not actually related, but really are after Greg explains this. So it's going to be the wildfires in California, Trump 2.0, and the Department of Government Efficiency. So Greg, where do we begin, brother?
Well, Matt, that is a lot for us to jump into. And we try in this podcast to not really deal with timely things, to more timeless concepts and the impact on the consumer. But as I was kind of noodling today what we were going to talk about, this where we are right now as we record this on the eve, essentially, of the inauguration, and coming through what is still non-contained, the wildfires in California, it resonated with me that there is something to learn here that is throughout this conversation of what happened in LA, what may happen with the inauguration, and what may happen with Doge, and how that's going to impact the clients over the next few years, and how that's going to move forward from there. So, heady stuff today.
Yeah. So starting with the wildfires. So I don't know if you know this, but my wife is a retired science teacher. And so we look at all of these sorts of natural disasters in a very, very different sort of light because of my wife knows the geology, the geography, the, biology that is underneath all of this. And I know this is a terrible thing to say, but that area of the world is designed to burn, and in fact does all the time. It's just never in such a highly populated, or very rarely in such a highly populated area. And Greg, it's to the ground, dude. I mean, the loss is unbelievable. And so let's talk about what that means to you.
Well, when I see the pictures of it, what immediately comes to my mind are the pictures of the firebombing in World War II. It's just so similar, just the pure devastation. And this is I'm not even going to say anything about terrorists being part of this. This is a new 9/11, right? To have a major metropolitan area that has had this level of devastation on a consumer level. And when you think about what that means, this is not going to build back quickly. How many years did it take for that stuff to be built out? And the ramifications going forward from there, from all the blue collar workers that, I see the blue collar communities there. I'm not worried about the actors. They'll go to the place in Montana, right? But the blue collar people, that this is their home, and how do we rebuild that? And you don't have any faith in the government out there right now, from the consumer, the citizens there. And do you have faith that, the incoming administration and the outgoing administration, as they have a recall on Mr. Governor out there, are they going to coordinate this? How's this going to work? And then we have the whole backdrop of the red state, blue state stuff going on. And this is something that we are just seeing now. It's the flash fire. And now that will regrow. And I didn't know that about your wife, because one of the things I was thinking about, and this is my analogy with Doge and Trump, is, this area nature knows what nature's going to do. Us humans just get in the way. And the cleansing fires and the renewal, the land is going to be okay. The humans are not, right? And so when we think about what's going to happen going forward, potentially with Doge, and the stated intention of Trump for the next 100 days is lighting a wildfire to the administrative state. And where's that going to lead us? So an optimistic reading of this is, you know, the wildfires happen and life regenerates. It takes time, comes back stronger. Yeah, I heard something interesting the other day. I didn't realize this, that sequoias have their sap is fire retardant. And that's how they've gone on for all these years. And
Well, and they also need to have, I mean, there are lots of different plants that fire is actually what allows them to reproduce and regenerate, because they need to have that high level of temperature to open up seeds and stuff like that. Now, we're getting heady here, but I need to bring you back down just very quickly. As much as I enjoy the heady stuff, and we're about to get there with Doge and Trump 2.0, but I want to talk a little bit about, as an attorney and as an advisor, what do you recommend the advisors that are working with people in LA? What should they be talking about? How do you manage this from a client relationship standpoint? Because, I mean, some of these people, they literally lost every possession that they have.
Starting off, a wise man once told me, I think on this podcast, first, shut the F up and listen.
That's a handsome guy too, by the way. The handsome guy.
A very striking young man. Because the turmoil in those people's lives is just unbelievable, devastating. I live in Central Ohio. We have tornadoes that come through and wipe out a little area, right? Not in my backyard, but not yet. Nothing on this scope, and what they have to come to grips with through listening is their life will never be the same. And how do we coach them? You and I talk about coaching a lot in this conversation, and it's not a pick yourself up by the bootstraps kind of thing, but rather the cleansing fires come through. Your life is completely different. How is that seed of yours going to respond to this event? And the neighborhoods will not be the same again in their lifetime. So do you stick where you are? Do you move on? When we start talking about the economic impact of this, so the right now, the cost of construction equipment and resources has already been escalating, and they can't build houses fast enough. So, have you ever sat there and like watched one of those teenage dystopian movies and said, what was the precipitating event that caused this to happen? And you could easily see that flip in LA right now, that the vast acreage miles of, as Will Smith is walking through the deserted streets as the last man standing, this is the type of thing that causes it, and where we take them here. So, if you've got clients that have been affected by this that way, they got to really think about, where does their next life start? Where does that Santa Ana wind take their seed, and where do they plant that? Because life ain't going to be the same again in that area.
So that's a magnificent transition into Trump 2.0, right? So one of the things that Trump is talking about in his first 100 days is all of these tariffs, and we get an unbelievable amount of our timber from Canada. Building expenses are already sky high. That is going to make them much, much, much higher. Where do we go from there?
How does it look if, instead of us building all these things with timber from Canada, but rather this is now the laboratory for all of the new construction methods that have been talked about but not implemented? that we've got 3D printed houses, things like that. So and this is kind of going into Doge. Okay, what Doge is promising is a whiteboard approach to the whole administrative state with this team of entrepreneurs driven by Musk and Ramaswamy, and taking a completely different look at our government. And when we think about the brush fire through the administrative state, what are all the excesses that get ripped away? What are the restrictions to trying to build with a 3D printer instead of timber from Canada that we're not able to experiment with right now because of the sclerosis in the administrative state that has grown to be used by the established economic powers to perpetuate their needs and their self-interest. And so now you have this possibility that this storm rages through the administrative state as well, that driven by things like, how do we solve this problem? Is LA going to be a tent city for the next decade? Or how do we replace tens of thousands of homes for blue collar people in a state that already has a housing crisis and a homelessness crisis? There has to be a fresh look at it, and it's only that I'll use the word sclerotic again, view of things that comes from the administrative state that stops some of these things from maybe being solutions.
So I'm playing devil's advocate here, which I'm assuming is why you wanted to do this today. So you have two business owners who are unbelievably wealthy looking at government efficiency. The first things that they're already talking about cutting are government programs that would help the blue collar people. And do you think that Doge is actually going to take a look at the largest aspect of bloated spending in the United States government, which is the military budget?
I would say yes to all the above. And again, this is one man's opinion, no basis in fact, right? But where, again, as a whiteboard exercise, what happened when Musk took over X?
It lost like 3/4 of its value.
And he didn't care about that, right?
Well, no. And he also fired a bunch of people.
Exactly. What else did it lose, right? It lost a lot.
Huge amount of people.
Yeah, yeah. And that was before really we had as much of the impact of the AI and those tools. So if you were to design an administrative state now on the backbone of how do we deliver those services to blue collar people, to whatever, how do we deliver those services efficiently? It's completely different, right? And that's what their mission is. No sacred cows. How do we do this? How do we get money? How do we get homes built in California to replace tens of thousands of homes as efficiently as possible without having all of this history that stops us? Whether it's an old EPA ruling regarding the darter fish or whatever, but how do we do that? And with people that have no political capital to worry about losing. And that's who they have recruited to be part of this. So when we think about, the impact of all this, the next few years are going to be jarring, absolutely jarring. And who knows what the market's going to do with that.
So let's take two things that you just said there and deconstruct them just a little bit more. So efficiency in the world of business, as you and I are business owners, one of the reasons why we look for efficiency is to increase overall profitability. And one of the easiest ways to increase profitability is to remove people from the equation, because labor costs are generally the highest costs that you have. which is only going to lead to a big pendulum swing into unemployment, which actually has been massively declining over the last administration. But the second thing is so we're moving to Trump 2.0 here. He wants to deport the people who actually are the ones who are doing the work, right? I mean, dude, my neighbors, just a quick digression here. So my neighbor's got a new roof. Okay. We say roof here in Michigan, right? Not roof. It's a larger home. It was done in a day. There were 10 people on the roof, unbelievably efficient, unbelievably skilled. Wham, bam. It was flipping done. Right. So in Florida, where they have just passed all of these laws where you can't bring in immigrants to work in the fields, fruits dying in the field, or housing, building, new home starts has basically become zero. How is this renewal, how is this Trump 2.0 going to actually help the people, circling all the way back to the homes that need to be built in LA? Whether it's 3D printing or another technology, there still has to be humans, and Americans, which is a very loose statement, don't do that work.
Yeah. So I think he's got an exit strategy on that. That was given to him by what is now a crisis. So first of all, their statements have always been that they're going to start with the criminals, people that have a criminal past. But now there is a crisis in construction. We need manpower in California. We need manpower in North Carolina. And just like a path to citizenship has been part of the military service, has been a path, well, now we have the new Civil Corps or whatever. Okay. And you know, for most people that talk about the immigration problem that are not on the polar ends of the conversation. Yeah, everybody thinks that we need people here. We need to know who they are, and we need to track, where they are until they're citizens. And we don't want them being able to disproportionately affect the political process. And by the way, we also think that there's a big problem with not having a path to citizenship for people that have more intellectual assets to give, right? But if we look at the laborer, we know the big industry wants them here, big construction wants them here, and now it's not a round them up and ship them out. At least for people that have skilled labor, it's now okay. We're going to set up homes for them in LA. A camp for them to work on building this, and they're going to earn their citizenship by being the construction crew for LA or something like that, right? So there is an easy exit strategy out of this conundrum that way. That if we're just not hanging on each word that's being said, that makes sense.
Okay, I'm sorry, dude, but he's saying these things, dude, and these are words that are coming out of his mouth. If you look at the amount of people who are in our country who actually have criminal backgrounds, it's not even statistically relevant, right? So getting them out just makes sense. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. The thing is they're not wanting to expose themselves after immigrant workers put billions of dollars in tax revenue. They might not be paying federal and state taxes, but with like income taxes, but they're actually paying gas taxes and food taxes and use taxes, all of these things. It's billions and billions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are really scared, period. I know some of them that are absolutely terrified that they're going to be deported, even though that they are intellectually providing unbelievable capital. Their labor's providing capital. I have to say that this first 100 days is going to be very telling on what is actually going to be done and what is bravado.
Yeah. And it's all negotiation with him. And the practical limitations on mass deportation make it a non-starter.
But that's what people voted for, bro.
They voted for action. They voted primarily for stop people coming in. Okay. Yeah. And let's stop the bleeding. Let's understand who is here. Let's understand that it is a infinitesimal fraction that are the troublemakers, and those ones don't stay around. And I also, I've often pondered the politics of immigration and why it's so screwed up. And I've come around to the other end of it as well, that it is as much a function of us as a government not being able to be frank that, hey, as much as we want the mind power that India, for example, can provide for us, India doesn't want to let people go because of brain drain. So there is that stressing, because I've got plenty of clients that are from India that would love to be here, and I talk to them about their journey to citizenship, and it's ridiculous. But there's bureaucracy on both sides that's causing that. And so again, getting back to kind of what Doge can do is, let's take out the underbrush. What are the core issues that we need to be having? How do we streamline that process so we don't have a fleet of bureaucrats that have to process each of the applications, and it sits in each one's desk for 6 months.
Years.
Yeah. How does that happen? So, but immigration is a touchy issue on that. Yeah, but one of the things you're going to with that, again, with transitions, and that could come from Doge. When Musk took over X, letting people go, and I think one of the things you're heading to is, what are the loss of people, employees, and when I was thinking about this the other day, it occurred to me that when we're talking about the budget, and we're talking about our deficit, and we're talking about cleaning up the administrative state, that one job off of the administrative payrolls is equal to X, call it 10 jobs in the public sector, because instead of that person being supported by the taxpayers, is now the taxpayer.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there's a leverage effect that can come out of that by cleaning out the administrative state, getting people that are qualified out and into private sector, and maybe, just maybe, this begins a renewal in growth.
Well, listen, brother, I don't think anybody listened to this episode, and I don't think really anybody who could quite possibly look at the examples that you're giving. Renewal is absolutely needed. The status quo is something that is not what I think this country needs. There are so many unintended consequences for some of the things that we're talking about today, especially with Doge and with this new administration, that are going to have ripple effects for a really, really long time. And I think a lot of times when you have a maverick person coming into office, or mavericks in Department of Government Efficiency, they're looking at this instead of a long timeline to gain the political capital to fulfill the promises that they made, and not really looking at what needs to go in the long term. And that's the difference between nature and humans, because nature is always looking for the next generation and generations to come. That's just like the sequoia example is a perfect example. The only way that sequoias go ahead and drop new seeds is there has to be a fire. Fire activates the reproductive cones. It actually opens up the cones and drops the seeds, right? That's not what happens with people, dude. Fire destroys all of our stuff. And even though it could be a very, very real renewal, man, it's going to be painful for quite a while.
Well, and that's, the other message from today is, people that are looking at, what the market has done for the last 2 years and where the market is right now, which is priced for perfection. Buckle up. This is why I'm on my march to the million, to save people from that loss, because it a blink, 50% of that goes away. The top 7, as we talked about before, are all the growth in that. And where are those predominantly located? California.
California.
Where
Yep.
it's going to happen. Oh, by the way, they in a pissing contest with the new administration. I fully expect 50% loss in the market sometime in the hand, maybe even the next 2 years, because of this happening. Long run, as we talked about before, the market does what the market does. It'll come up and it'll grow, but we got to go through the burn in of the wood, and then we'll get the regrowth.
Yeah. Amen to that, brother. And this is one of the reasons why I know that you're a fan of some of the products and services that you use within your own financial services firm to make sure that your clients are protected against major blips. Now, I'm actually surprised that we haven't really dived into the 2025 tax cuts, and maybe that's an episode that we'll be doing in the future, because there are going to be some sunsetting aspects of it. And I've actually already done a couple of interviews with some CPAs and estate planning attorneys on what they should be talking to their clients about. So I know that that's more timely than we usually talk about on the show. And maybe that's just a video that you shoot for all of our listeners to realize that you really need to follow Greg. You need to be on the mailing list to get these updated ideas, because that's how you're communicating more timely sort of concepts, where the podcast is really meant to help train and really continue to gain momentum for us to really march to 1 million. So, so what do you think about any of that? I just kind of dropped that on you. I don't think you're prepared for that.
It's a whole nother concept, whole nother conversation. Yep. It's another 22.5 minutes, as our mark is.
That's right. That's fantastic. All right. So, again, if people want to reach out and find out more about how they can get more timely information from you, where should they go?
You can follow me on LinkedIn, Greg DuPont. Go to www.joinwsn.com to find out a little bit more about what we're doing, and like and follow this podcast.
And share the podcast. So this is one of the great things about podcasting specifically is it's a really wonderful grassroots opportunity for you to find people that you have things in common with. You like what they're saying, you believe what they're saying, and you know that you have friends, coworkers, other professional acquaintances, and even family that share your personal opinions and want to share this. It's so easy to share the show. You just literally click the share button. You can send the show directly through text message, through email, and share it on social media. And we'd appreciate all of those. If we're truly going to be able to help 1 million families over the next 10 years, we need your help. And the easiest way for you to do that is rate the show, share the show, follow Greg, go to joinwsn.com and find out more how you can help the March to 1 Million. So for Greg, this is Matt Halloran. We'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Thank you for listening to the March to 1 Million podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available, and get in touch with our team by visiting our website at www.wealthsolutionsgroup.biz, or give us a call at 614-432-8065. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Wealth Solutions Network. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice from qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have.